Are you gaining weight on keto, but you can't figure out why? Even after losing 100 pounds and keeping it off for more than 5 years, I regained nearly 50 pounds on a ketogenic diet. Now that I'm finally back on track, I figured out what led to my weight regain. I want to share why I regained the weight so you don't make the same mistakes. Now, before we get into it, please like the video and subscribe because I want to show you how I got my skill to budge after 40, even after nothing else worked. Also, if you want the guide that I use with my clients to help them build a stronger metabolism over 40, drop a comment below. I'll show you how I built a roaring metabolism in 4 easy steps. Hey, I'm Nissa, and my 100-pound weight loss story was featured in media like People Magazine and Pop Sugar. Now, I help women break free from yo-yo diets with the same macro approach I used to lose 100 pounds. Okay, let's talk about 4 reasons I regained weight even while I was still following a strict keto diet. The first reason I gained weight on keto was I was stressed out. Looking back at the information that I tracked in Chronometer, my weight regain began somewhere around August of 2019. Now, at the time, I was dealing with some chronic health problems like daily fatigue and migraines that I was getting somewhere around 2 to 3 days per week, maybe sometimes even 4. And even though my scale was already on an upward trajectory, the debacle that was 2020 didn't help out my already stressed out body. Now, on top of all this stress, I was also attempting to run a business while being a stay-at-home mom to 2 small kids. And throughout 2020, I had a series of surgeries, which of course didn't help my situation. Added on to all of this stress, I began regaining some of the weight that I worked so hard to lose. Now, even though it was just 10 or 15 pounds at first, so it didn't seem like a big deal, it added up to more than 50 pounds over 2 years. But at the beginning, it didn't seem all that big of a deal, and I was a keto pro. I also understood how to fast my way back down to an ideal body weight. But this time, the fatigue and the migraines and other health symptoms I was struggling with stopped any attempts at keto and intermittent fasting in their tracks. I noticed the more that I fasted or the lower I cut carbs, the worse that I felt the next day. And on days that I didn't feel well, it was way harder to stick with any diet restrictions like keto or intermittent fasting. Soon enough, it just became this vicious cycle of trying to eat low carb and stick with fasting, but then feeling really, really bad the next day. And after some time of following this cycle, I realized that stressing my body out with more diet restrictions was just too much. Of course, I didn't realize this until I continued to run into these diet dead ends for at least a few years. And this was because at the time, I thought keto and intermittent fasting held all of the answers to weight loss. These days, I understand that they're both just tools that are helpful for some people, but for a woman who's going through too much stress, adding more stressors isn't really the answer. And that's exactly what keto and intermittent fasting are. They're stressors to your body. So if you're attempting keto and intermittent fasting when you're dealing with so much other life stress, maybe it's time to figure out a more gentle and sustainable approach. While it may take a little bit longer to get the weight off, I promise you that there is no need to follow extreme weight loss measures, especially if your stress bucket is already overfilled. Okay, the second reason that I gained weight on keto is my movement decreased by a lot. Now, when I first began keto, I didn't really realize how much movement I was getting. As someone who previously depended on cardio for weight loss for decades of my life, I didn't think exercise had much to do with my weight loss while following keto because as a mom of 2 small kids, I didn't really have a lot of time for formal exercise. What I didn't take into account was how much movement moms of small kids actually get throughout the day. When my kids were babies, I was constantly getting up to make another bottle or change another diaper, or always had some mess to clean. When they were toddlers, I was constantly chasing them around the house to make sure that they were safe and, of course, to play with them. Or we were always on the go at parks or some kind of play dates, and when we weren't, there were always more messes to clean up. Or, kids constantly want snacks. I was just always up and down without even realizing it. Now, it just so happens that my kids started becoming more independent right around the time that I ran into those health problems. And since I was dealing with a lot of migraines and fatigue, I was sitting around a lot more than the days when I was chasing my kids around. But since I didn't realize how much even moderate movement affects calories burn portion of the fat loss equation, I never took into account how much my new sedentary lifestyle would lead to weight regain. And even though I was diligent about sticking to my keto lifestyle and intermittent fasting routine, the weight just kept piling on. Now, I've since learned that neat movement, which is just random activities you perform throughout the day, like grocery shopping or, even cleaning the house, this can be a pretty significant source of calories burned throughout the day. In fact, according to Dr. Huberman, you can burn hundreds to thousands more calories each day through neat movement than someone who is more sedentary. Now that I understand the importance of being more active throughout the day, I track movement with my smartwatch. Now, I first began tracking last July, and due to a foot injury that I had, I was only averaging around 3,000 steps per day. Since then, I've done exercises to strengthen my foot while also slowly working my step count up to somewhere between 10,000 to 12,000 steps most days. And while it did take some work to get there, these days walking 10,000 steps or more has just become part of my routine. The third reason I gained weight, even while following keto, is I stopped going to the gym. Now, even though this reason seems similar to what we just talked about, there's actually more to quitting the gym than just getting more movement. Now, back in 2020, I didn't really have much choice but to quit the gym because lockdowns were going on and most public gyms had to close for several months. Now, back then, I didn't really think much of it since I saw the gym as more of a place that I could go for some great cardio workouts. At the time, I was only resistance training maybe 2 or 3 days per week for like 20 to 30 minutes at a time. The thing is, weight training only 2 to 3 days per week can still have pretty significant results when it comes to keeping your metabolism strong. At the very least, getting into the gym this often is going to send the signal to your body that it should hold on to the muscle that you have. And maintaining or ideally gaining more lean muscle is exactly the signal you need to send in order to keep a strong metabolism. Now, keeping up with what even seems like a small amount of weight training can be enough to help your body burn mostly fat while you're in a calorie deficit. When regular weight training sessions aren't part of your weight loss routine, this sends a signal to your body to get rid of your more metabolically expensive muscle along with fat. And this is a big reason that both weight loss plateaus as well as weight regain happen. So, whether you continue to follow a keto diet or maybe you're ready to switch up your plan, it's important to focus on maintaining or gaining more lean muscle with resistance training at least a few days each week. The fourth reason I gained weight while still following keto is I wasn't eating enough protein. Now, for many women, following a keto diet means a diet that's very high in fat. In fact, some keto plans promote up to 75 to 85% of calories from fat. And in order to hit this means that you're going to have to substantially lower carbs, but you'll also have to keep protein low. Now, back when I first began keto, somewhere around 2014, my main goal was to cut back on carbs while also keeping calories low. Now, as long as I had these two weight loss metrics dialed in, I felt like I was on track. As I learned more about a ketogenic diet, I revamped my goals to focus on eating more fat while also cutting back on protein because I didn't want to deal with the dreaded gluconeogenesis effect that so many experts have warned me about. Now, eventually, keto became a diet filled with fat bombs and fatty coffees and keeping carbs as low as possible. Since I attempted to keep my fat high, the amount of protein that I ate started to fall by the wayside. And while this did work for a little while, cutting protein too low eventually caught up to me. And one big reason that following a diet that's low in protein is a problem ties in with what we just talked about. When you don't eat enough protein in order to build muscle, your body just won't keep it around. And the less muscle you have, the lower your metabolism will go. So this means that you can't eat as much food without gaining weight. And if you're a woman over 40 like me, it is imperative that you eat even more protein since your protein needs actually increase as you age. And this helps you deal with the decrease in age-related muscle loss. Plus, there are plenty of other pros when it comes to a high protein diet, some of which include feeling fuller longer since protein is the most satiating macro, burning more calories from the protein digestion because of the thermic effect of food, and even reduced cravings because now your body is getting the nutrients that it needs to thrive. Okay, so there you have 4 reasons that I regained weight even while following a strict keto diet and intermittent fasting schedule. Now, if you find yourself in the same situation and you are ready to make weight loss easier, just drop a comment below and I will send you the guide that I use with my clients to help them build a strong metabolism with 4 easy steps.